Hello and welcome to our chat. We're going to be talking about curating psychological safety through the stages of your user research. We are Urška and I am a designer, but on a project that I'm going to be talking about today, I was a researcher working with key workers during COVID-19. And
I'm Rachel. I'm a user researcher, and the project that I'll be talking about today, I was working with women who have been receiving misogynistic abuse on Twitter.
We are working for a studio called Paper. We are a research and design studio based in Sheffield. We are currently in our spaces, which is a bit of a nice difference than from working from home. And we are making sure that through all the work that we're doing, we're always putting our users first. That is our priority, and we make sure that no one is left behind.
So how we got here, before we go into the main bulk of our talk, just want to explain how we learned so much about psychological safety. We didn't follow a set method. We didn't follow a framework for doing this. What we did was try and educate ourselves, ask questions, think critically about the work that we're doing, share our thought processes, what was working, what wasn't, with each other and with other people doing similar roles. So the things that we're going to talk through today is just some of the things that we've learned. There'll be things missing, there'll be more to learn, but it's a snapshot of where we're up to at the moment. So how it's going to work today, we will give you details about the two projects that we just mentioned, about the work we were doing, and then we'll split those into the 4 stages of doing research. And within those, we'll give you do's and don'ts to help you curate psychological safety throughout your research processes. So there's about 15 do's and don'ts in total. So what do we mean by psychological safety? So here we're really talking about just trying to create an environment where participants feel comfortable enough to express themselves and to feel comfortable doing that without any fear of consequences. So we want to create spaces where people can bring their authentic experiences and their own knowledge to those spaces and feel extremely comfortable doing that. Part of the things that we need to do to build that psychological safety is to be aware of what might be triggering for our participants and making sure that we don't intentionally do things that might cause them any harm. So why it's important in research specifically, if we don't create an environment where people feel like they can be themselves and give us their true opinions, their true experiences, their true thoughts, we're going to get back what people think we want to hear. We're going to get back what they think is a socially acceptable answer. That then has huge consequences for you designing your services, whatever it is that you're designing. You need their true experiences, true thoughts. And to do that, to start building that safety, we need to be really clear about our roles. You bring a lot more power to a situation as a researcher than a participant. So you need to be clear about what your role is, what their role is, and where the boundaries are between them. What will come of the research that they're doing, making sure that everything is very clear, laid out for them. And just to explain, we're not talking about consent today, and I'm sure some people will be wondering why. Consent is essential for building psychological safety. Informed consent tells people what they're taking part in, who's doing that research, how to remove themselves from a study if they want to, but it is its own important process. And what we are talking about today builds on top of the psychological safety you build with a thorough consent process.
So, as we said before, we're going to go through those stages that are building on top of your consent form. So we will be covering planning, recruitment, in between research session and aftercare, how we build the psychological safety in between those. Okay. So for our talk, we are basing this on an experience from our project, and I will be talking about my experience on working on a project with schools during COVID-19. Our key participants were key workers in school that were really time poor and really overloaded because of the COVID constraints that were put on schools. So we have to be careful about how much time we ask of them, as well as we have to justify to our client why is it crucial for us to speak to them. So we had different external constraints that we have to deal with around psychological safety of our users.
And I was conducting some research with women who have been targeted with misogynistic abuse on Twitter. So misogyny by itself is a really sensitive topic, and asking people about their experiences of it has the potential to bring out past trauma. It can be a really difficult conversation for people. And actually it was quite difficult for the researchers as well, because we're also dealing with that distressing subject quite a regular basis. And we were volunteering, so we were working on this sensitive topic alongside other projects. And just to be clear about these two projects, whilst we love working together, we were working on these projects at the same time, so therefore apart from each other. So we were trying to share our learning as it was happening. After the fact, this worked really well for me, this didn't. So that's where a lot of the knowledge has come from today.
Yes, and we always love that, to exchange what we have used or what we have tried out, to learn from each other and also do stuff like that and share it with other people. So now we're going into planning in the first stage. So in planning, your goal should be to combine the needs of your project with the constraints with project which protect your participants. So in that, I'm talking about, do put your participants' needs before your own. So we were thinking in the sense of, we were working remote. So the way, the methods that we could use for our research were limited, but also in the sense of what are we using to speak to our users? Because schools have a lot of logs on different programs that we can use to communicate. We were really making sure that we're using the programs that are accessible for schools so that they don't have to struggle and look into if they can download the extra apps. And we had to think about those things at the start in our planning, where we had to introduce that to our client of how are we gonna make sure that we are not burdening people even more than they already are.
On my project, one of the things that we were really focused on was making sure we weren't asking for more information than we needed. We were asking people to relive past traumas, talk us through experiences of being abused, and the consequences of that. We wanted to be really clear that if we didn't know how we were going to use that information, that we didn't ask them to relive it, just so that we could maybe learn something that might be helpful.
The next don't plan for more time than your participant can offer. As I mentioned, my participants were really time poor. So we were thinking about in our planning, how much time it's sensible to ask of them, as well as when we can ask of that time. So we were thinking either before their working hours or after. So we extended the time that they can book in, as well as like what is appropriate time that we can ask of them. So we decided on 45 minutes on that. We did that in planning session because we had to go back to our client, introduce them our ways of how we're going to protect and make sure that the participants are not burdened even more than they already have on. Next one is recruitment. In recruitment, our main goal is to recruit people mindfully. And we did so by
one of the things we did was making sure participants are aware of who will be doing the research. So I think this is the only time we'll talk about consent again, is you always need to say who is doing the research, who they're doing it on behalf of for our project, because of what misogyny is generally directed at women from men. We wanted to be really clear that there was a male researcher on our team, and we made it very clear how people could opt out of having that male researcher conduct their session. No matter what time they wanted, what time they were free, we would make sure a female researcher would be able to do it instead. And again, being really clear about what topic you want to talk about and why you want to talk about it. I mean, technically, again, this is informed consent, but on top of how you'd normally say, you're always trying to find the balance, aren't you, between enough information that somebody is informed about why they're taking part, not so much information that you might potentially bias them before they arrive at your session. But we were very clear. We were talking about misogynistic abuse on Twitter, how we were going to use that, giving people all the information they needed to decide whether they felt okay coming to talk to somebody about the topic.
And another do is you look into who you are trying to reach out, and and how much they already have on. So in the process of recruitment, what we have done is every time we were thinking of contacting the school, we checked on their school, we did some desk research, and we checked on their school webpage if how much they have on, what are the informations that they are providing, are they having any alarming notifications that they're really busy or constrained, that kind of helped us indicate if that school is very busy and we're not going to contact them at that point of time, or if they could potentially be a candidate that we can reach out to and ask for the specific people that we wanted to talk to with. And another one, do create a criteria of what is worth people's time and what would be burdensome. We were lucky enough that our client was really keen to talk to us, and also not just to us, but also to learn a lot about our participants. But obviously, because we were time poor with our time that we have available with them, and we had our project plan and research goals, we were really strict with our client of what we can and can't get out of the session, as well as making sure that they are aware why. So making sure like how much time we have and what we already have to talk to with our participants, as well as making sure that our participants know that this is the exact subject that we're going to speak about. Our favorite, in between user research session. So in between user research session, your main goal around psychological safety should be assessing that our participants' state of mind before and after in the session. And we do that during the session. What we have done is the first thing what we do in our session is to do check-in, to start the session and ask them how are they feeling. So in our session that worked really well, because it allowed participants, some of them even for the first time, to just think about how are they and how are they feeling. There's not a lot of people that asked about how are you today. As well, we always make sure that we give them an option. So if you would mind, I would like to check in with you. So we never forced a check-in on them and always allowed them to have an option. But everyone in our session was really happy that we actually took a time and asked them. And of course, from research perspective, that gave us a good option to check in, how are they, if they were really stressed out, or if they were talking about all the different things that they have to do, so a bit frazzled with all the different thinking, we might said like, I think you have enough already. What if we reschedule and you have just this hour for yourself and do something that you would not have time to do?
One of the don'ts is making sure you don't phrase question in a way which may make someone feel like a victim. It's in the same way, I guess, that you would make sure you weren't asking somebody a question that was full of assumptions, that was full of bias. Make sure you do the same so that you don't have a pitying tone of voice that would lead somebody to feel like they should tell you how hard it was, how upset they were about it, rather than being able to tell you actually how they felt about it. And you start doing this by just constantly critiquing yourself, writing a question, say it out loud to someone else, see how it sounds, and just keeping that process, just keep iterating until you get to a nice neutral question about an experience.
And of course, as well, when we check in, we also do checkouts. So at the end of the session, we always checked out with our participants. Again, we took time to just see how are they, and that goes back to our goal to always assess how are we leaving our participants after a session, to make sure that their mind is in a good state. And that worked again really well with us, not just for the sake of them having a moment for themselves, but because we were talking about a subject that is quite can be quite frustrating work that they have to do. It was a good opportunity for them to just like a bit vent out about certain things that were really hard for them, and that was basically just a good indication that we are leaving them in an okay state, and give them a bit of a time, and also give a bit of a feedback on our session to see that they actually got something out of it as well, not just we.
And do make sure you have a list of organisations which could offer support. So we're based in the UK. For all of our projects, we tend to have contact details about Samaritans or Mind on hand in case somebody needs a bit of extra support. For a project like this, we wanted to make sure that it was much more specific to the kind of situations our participants were facing. So we did a lot of desk research about organizations that were supporting people who were receiving online abuse, and particularly those who were supporting women who were receiving online abuse regularly. And whenever we checked out with people, so we did the same process, and no matter how they checked out, we said, and I do have this list, if you would like to see it, I'm more than happy to share it with you, and we could share it instantly with them.
Another one, do feedback to your client about how they can support users. So that is one for when you're finished with your sessions. And we were working with quite a big client, and the participants are participants working in a role that was quite new to schools. And therefore, it was really good that we could feedback to our clients about their workload, how long they spend on certain things, how time poor they are, to kind of help not just the subject that we were talking about with our participants, but also in general to just improve their situation and help them. That is a little something that we feel like we can return based on them taking their time out to speak to us. Aftercare, that is you.
Yeah. So this is where we're going to talk about, you finish this research, you finish your sessions with your participant. What we're talking about now is the people who conducted that research and the people that observed it as well. And your goal here is that your researchers feel supported and that they feel safe once they've completed these sessions.
So the first one is ask if they are able to facilitate more session at the end of each one. So it's a paper policy that user research is a team sport. So we do never have only one researcher working on any kind of project that is run by paper. Therefore, we always have an ability to switch between facilitation and observers. So if I would be facilitating one session, the next session would be facilitated by Rachel, and so on, so that we have a session of a break in between our facilitation. But also, no matter what, we always check in. Are you okay? Do you feel fine to facilitate this session? It should never feel like I need to do this. And if you don't feel like you are not in a state to facilitate the session, it's really important that you feel that you can say, I can't do this, and there's no explanation needed for that. It is you coming first. And if you can't and you don't feel okay to facilitate the session, it's better if you don't.
And do ask questions about how your team are going to look after themselves. Now, no matter what the project is, you should be making sure your team is happy and that they're healthy and that they're feeling okay. For this particular project, a lot of us found it had a much bigger impact on us than we were expecting. We were taking a lot from those research sessions, we were carrying it with them. So again, we were checking out at the end of each session with the other researcher on the project, and we'd make sure we'd ask ourselves at the end of the day, how are you feeling? What are you going to do tonight to try and take your mind off this? Do you have a self-care plan? What are you going to do off that? Making sure we had activities that would distract our brains from all of the information, the darkness that we had heard about the world that day, that we'd be able to enjoy an evening by ourselves.
And also, don't leave sessions without debriefing as a facilitator and observers in the team. It's one of my policies. If you are observing and facilitating user research session that I lead on, it means that you will have another half an hour after the session to debrief. So we all stay on the call and we chat not just about what we have saw in the session and what are the key finds that we observed or see or heard from the session, but also to see how the observers and the facilitators feeling about the session. If it was something that can be triggering for them, or if they have spotted something that make them feel uncomfortable. So it's both ways, not to just get the key insights or the insights that they have spotted first, but also to check in with them if they are feeling okay after the session was done. And recap, this is all. This is the 4 stages. So I know Rachel mentioned it was 15 stages of 15 do's and don'ts. So what we want for you to take from our sessions are these 3 key questions. So when you're doing a responsible user research on a project, if you're thinking about psychological safety of your users and yourselves, we want you to think about these three questions. The first one is, how am I going to protect my participants and myself? The second one is, how can I make sure I don't burden people when they take part in the research? And third one is, how I will ensure that I'm not leaving anyone in a worse state than when they arrive to the session. This is the three key elements we want you to take away from our chat today. And of course, it doesn't matter how you get there, it matters how you do it. Nothing is perfect. It will never be. And what I love about this is, as we said, it's two different projects, and that we always check in with each other and see what methodology we use, and we build on that. This is our current thing that we will be doing on the projects, but it doesn't mean that as soon as we will be on the next project, we will build up on that. And that is what this is. You need to try something and assess, have a critical thinking, talk to each other, talk to other people that might be working in these realms, and build on that. And it matters that you do it, and it doesn't matter how you get there. As well as researcher well-beings matter. We matter. As Rachel mentioned, you always take a part of user research sessions with you back home, and it can be a lot. We have our own personal lives, and then on top of that, we might take on parts of our research session, things that had happened to our participants, and that's why we need to be mindful of ourselves and our well-being as well. And my favorite quote, if you cannot take care of yourself, you will not be able to look after your participants. It is important to take care of yourself as well. That's all from us. Hopefully you enjoyed our talk.
Thank you for listening.